Big Deke news on a Monday. You got your classic Devin Bush offseason news, a new suitor for Steelers linebackers coach Brian Flores, and also more evidence that the Steelers got screwed out of the playoffs. All that and more, Big Deke news. On Saturday night, you had the Jacksonville Jaguars complete one of the most epic comebacks in playoff history against the LA Chargers. Hashtag free Justin Herbert. And while that was happening, Steeler linebacker, or shall I say probable former Steeler linebacker, Devin Bush was making some very curious tweets. He says, playing for a former NFL player. Thought emoji. Putting two and two together, Devin Bush's current head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, never played in the NFL. And while Devin Bush made this tweet, as I said, the Jaguars and the Chargers were playing. And the Jaguars head coach, Doug Peterson, did play in the NFL. He was a former quarterback. So Devin Bush is thinking playing for a former player is intriguing. So maybe Devin Bush had the Jaguars and Doug Peterson on his mind, or maybe not. It is a little bit telling, though, as the game goes on. Devin Bush proceeds to tweet highly positive things about the Jaguars. But what does this all mean? I don't think it's a stretch to say that Devin Bush won't be back with the Steelers. I feel like most of us thought that he wasn't going to be back anyway because the Steelers weren't looking to bring him back. But now after seeing Devin Bush's sentiments and his tweets, he probably doesn't want to be back either. So it looks like a mutual agreement from both sides. I mean, just when you put all the evidence together, you have this tweet, the fact that Devin Bush's father played in the NFL, so maybe former NFL player pedigree is something that D. Bush values when it comes to coaching staff. The fact that Mike Tomlin wasn't a former NFL player, and it just so happens that things didn't work out here in Pittsburgh with Devin Bush. He never really reached his potential, so maybe he's thinking it would be better to play for a guy that knows what it's like to be an NFL player. Not saying that's the right mentality to have, but based off that tweet, I don't think it's that far of a stretch. At least it's something he's pondering or thinking about. But that's a far cry from the truth, in my opinion. Mike Tomlin not being an NFL player has nothing to do with Devin Bush not living up to his potential here in Pittsburgh. But also, you got a potential scheme fit problem. There are talks that the 3-4 was not optimal for D. Bush, and he might be better fit for a 4-3. So putting all these factors together, I don't think it's that crazy to think that Devin Bush is going to be looking elsewhere. And I think the Steelers, as we saw with Mark Robinson getting more snaps towards the end of the season, and also Robert Spillane playing 100% of the snaps in the last 4 games, yeah, they were probably thinking about moving on as well. Speaking of linebackers, Steelers linebackers coach and defensive assistant Brian Flores is being courted by another NFL team for his services in an upgraded capacity. First, it was the Cleveland Browns looking for Flores in the defensive coordinator role. Now, the Arizona Cardinals are looking at Flores to potentially be their next head coach. Little did Brian Flores know that when he decided to come to the Steelers, it meant that eventually he would find himself over at Steelers West with the Arizona Cardinals. And there's nothing he can do about it. It is the way. It is his destiny now. Once the Arizona Cardinals become interested in a former Steeler, there's no more fighting it. But this is interesting, too, from another perspective. I heard Colin Cowherd talk about this once, that typically when NFL teams make a head coaching change, they go from one extreme to the other. So in the Cardinals case here, they go from Cliff Kingsbury, who's considered this offensive guru, coming out of Texas Tech with the air raid offense, to now interviewing a guy like Brian Flores, who is a very defensive-minded head coach. Not saying a decision has been made, but I do like this for Flores' chances. But in all honesty, either way, Brian Flores will be the next head coach for the Arizona Cardinals because, as I already said, it is written. Former Steeler to AZ, it's just destiny. And then last thing before I sign off, we have some news that's really going to piss you off on this Monday morning. From Tom Pelissero, he says the NFL fined Jets Quincy Williams $14,111 for unnecessary roughness, a controversial horse collar penalty in last week's loss to the Dolphins, who qualified for the playoffs with the win. So you mean to tell me the NFL is covering up their shitty calls by fining players that make legal tackles to make it look like the shitty call was actually right? Unfucking real. And it pisses me off even more after watching these games from over the weekend, because you can't tell me that after watching these AFC playoff games from Saturday and Sunday that the Steelers couldn't compete in these playoffs. It was a sloppy mess of turnovers across the board. Jaguars, Chargers, are you kidding me? And then you got Bills, Dolphins. The Bills almost lose to a Skylar Thompson-led Dolphins team. Barely beat them. And then Bengals, Ravens. The Bengals almost lost to the Ravens at home had it not been for the Tyler Huntley QB sneak fumble fiasco. You mean to tell me the Steelers couldn't compete against these teams? Because the Steelers' formula in the late stages of the year was not turning the ball over, playing clean football, moving the ball up and down the field, controlling the clock, and then playing good defense. And typically that is a recipe for success when it comes down to nut crunch time, which is the playoffs. And you have all these other teams self-imploding. But alas, here we are, and we wait for next year. But that's it for this edition of Big Deke News. Let me know what you guys think of some of the things I talked about on this episode. Apologies, would have had more content for you over the weekend, but I don't know if you could tell just from me talking. I was a little sick, but we definitely got some heat dropping for you for the rest of the week, so stay tuned there. And again, hope you guys enjoyed. Stay chilling on a Monday. Peace.